For this video, I'm going to do another mutation drawing similar to the one that I did recently, which was inspired by a drawing that I'd actually made, I think it was last year. It must have been actually last year, with the how to draw like PeterDraws video, which if you're not aware of that video, I'll leave a link here. And I will also leave a link in the description of this video to my recent mutation drawing. So I started off this by drawing random shapes with ink onto an A4 piece of paper, just a complete doodle, and just thought I just need to start a drawing. Sometimes I can overthink things a bit and I really just need to get something on the page. So that's how I started, and I didn't conceive of what I was going to do with it, and it takes me quite a while to process where a drawing needs to go. But I've been encouraged to do more of these drawings by John Mahoney, who was a recent guest on my podcast, and I hugely respect his body of work and him as a person, and I kind of know that I need to make more drawings, whether they're like this or like other things. I need to just do something which is a bit more consistent, so that I have a certain amount of images which are part of a collection. So this is the start of that, really. This is the second one, and the idea is to kind of draw a kind of mutation which is sort of Akira inspired, almost Jason the Wheeled Warriors kind of stuff, which if you don't know that, I'll leave a couple of I'll do a couple of inserts here. That's what the idea is some kind of mutation thing, and to do kind of a certain amount of the drawing. What I did in the last video was I drew it and then took a picture of the drawing, started to digitally colour the drawing, and then I also continued with the ink drawing. But the way that worked out, I preferred the digital version. So instead of agonizing over doing a finish for the physical version, the ink version, I just left it as the line stage, where it was hatched in certain places for texture, but left largely where it was for the benefit of the digital completion of the drawing. So I kind of get enough details in there and enough intersecting lines and bits of shapes that I feel would make an interesting image, really. I don't want to overcomplicate it, even though it may seem like it in this stage of the drawing. I really was just hoping to create intersecting paths of kind of stringy, sinewy material. I think the reason for that is because it's compositionally more interesting when I see an image which has got diagonals in both directions, and also just strange clumps of material that are hard to decipher, hard to interpret. I find quite interesting, especially if it has form. Now, there's definitely more that I can do with things like this, but at this point I just wanted to create these shapes and then add another dimension of shadow and kind of shape to them by doing a bit of hatching, a bit of stippling, something which will create a bit of texture on the lines, or within the lines, I should say. That's what I was aiming for, and that's where I started to use certain tricks that I know. So one of which would be doing a line of hatching, and then next to that do smaller hatching with a little gap in between. So it's got 2 rows of hatching. It just creates this continued form, which I think is quite nice. Not all over the place, just in selected places, and then bits of stippling here and there. There's definitely other things which I'm looking to do in future iterations of this style. But for this drawing, I just wanted to see whether I can have some mechanical or machinery looking elements on top of the mutation, which was something which I discussed in the last video, and I need to explore more, really, because I only did it in sparse sections, and I think I could do far more geometric shapes that are machine looking and mechanical, or as if it's been engineered to an extent, and then have the mutation burst out of that. I think that'll be quite interesting. So that's the plan. But here's the point where I take a photograph of the drawing. I start tweaking it, doing certain effects on my phone, just trying to get it to a stage where I can upload it onto the computer. And once I've got it there, then I start to figure out how to colour it. And I thought if I can include that section for you as well on the video, then it might be quite interesting to see how I lay down the colours. And I try to use colours that are not too bright and poppy, because I find that with the kind of combination put together, even though it's tertiary colours, they still seem quite bright to me, and I try to keep them fairly faded. So I might again experiment with that in the future, where I really keep the colours very muted. But for this, I just pick away as quick as I can at the shapes to try and get in as much solid colour as possible. And I don't do the light and shadow of the colour. It's another thing that I might do in the future, where you get a lighter shade of that hue and add it to the light side, and then create this additional form. I quite like the flat image, and I think it's just a bit of a stylistic choice at this point. And I do appreciate light and shade in the digital shading realm, but for this type of drawing I don't mind it being quite flat, because it sort of reminds me of the old animated shows that I liked in films. It has that 2D cell animation quality to it, even though I'm sure they had light and shadow, but it's just keeping things flat still has this dimension to it of movement and form, which I really still appreciate. And it was quite fun kind of balancing the colours around. I didn't have to do much mix and match. I just laid them in there and was trying to be as careful as I could to where I was deciding to place them, because I didn't want too many similar colours together. I wanted there to be an overlap of different hues to try to create interest, so that it wasn't too many reds together or too many yellows together or too many flesh tones, things like that. I just tried to space those out as I could, and then I tried to stay consistent with things like the kind of stringy substance which I have wrapped around certain subjects in this image. I tried to make that a consistent purple colour, and then certain bits I wanted it to kind of almost a flesh-like orange, which I thought was quite a nice alteration than having everything that deep purple. I thought things like that make it more impactful, really, to make things really pop out quite a bit. So I enjoyed this stage of it, but it was a race to the finish, because I wanted to have this video ready and uploaded and just on the channel, really, so that I'm still adding it, because at the moment I've been busy doing other things. I haven't been doing much drawing, so this has really been, as much as I can get done with the time that I have left of the day, because at the moment I'm doing a lot of interviews of artists, and I'm going to speak about that project in another video. I'll show bits of videos that I'm going to do to promote the event and the exhibition that I'm part of, and it's an exciting thing. It's a nice thing to talk about, but this is nothing to do with that, even though I have shown this group I've shown people who are running this group and this exhibition. I've shown them the style that I'm doing at the moment, not this specific image, but I've shown them the previous one, and I think they were quite engaged with that and wanted me to do some sort of 2D image for their exhibition. So anyway, I'll talk about that in another video. For this one, it was really a case of trying to be true to certain elements as well. So I wanted greyish tones, or hues I should say, for the certain parts of the machinery. I thought it should really look like bits of metal tangled into there, or kind of protruding out of something. I didn't want it to be something which was a poppy colour, not poppy as in the flower, but a colour that pops. I wanted it to seem metallic, and making it grey just seemed like an easy fix for that thing. You know what I mean? It's just a way of doing it. This is the part where I started adding this fleshy orange colour that I mentioned earlier, which I was considering making this purple, but I'm glad that I made it a really kind of deep but yet still a brightness to this orange, because I think it makes it almost look raw and almost painful, as though it just reminds me of parts of flesh. All of this kind of does look like something which could spill out of a human being's guts, and it may sound a bit disgusting. I'm not trying to make this a horror image or a gross image at all. I don't think it's gross. I think it's still got some kind of I don't know, it's not there yet, where it's got a wetness to it. And I think if I really worked on the light and shadow, I could really push those aspects of artwork, and I don't necessarily want to achieve that at the moment. I want it to be more cool and mutation looking than to be gross and horror. But it still has this suggestion, and I think I won't be the only one who sees that potential. But yeah, it was just tricky because I'm working as well with a mouse, so I'm not using a tablet and stylus, which I'm going to try in the future on this new computer. I don't know if it'll be compatible, but I've just been using what works at the moment. I've also been trying to learn Affinity Photo. That's what I did this in, and I used to use Photoshop, but Photoshop on my old computer has just said no recently. Scratch disks are full. It's an old computer. I'm sure I've accumulated a lot of rubbish on there that could be cleared off, and that's what's slowing things down and filling up the scratch disks. And I use CCleaner and all this stuff which you use on computers to try and clean up space. Didn't work, so I just thought, right, it's time to bite the bullet and learn the new program. And there's been some growing pains. There was a couple of moments, and I'll have them in this video, where the whole canvas is just skewed on an angle, and it took me a moment to figure out how I'd done that. And that was a bit of a panic for me to think, what's happened and how do I get back to where it was, because everything had just gone to a bit of a Dutch angle, and I didn't want it to do that, and I didn't know how I'd done it, so it was just strange. You keep seeing these flashes as well of the palette, so you can see the colours that I'm picking from. I think they're all quite nice, a patchwork of different things, and I'm trying to figure out what's going to work best for this almost box-like shape which I drew at the very beginning of the sketch, and it wasn't intended to be anything at that point, and it was kind of a concern for me because it was the most structured shape that I'd made that wasn't part of a mutation. It was the machinery side, and everything else was just very abstract kind of lines and marks, and that became a bit of a box shape that looked like it could be something. So I was worried about how well it would fit, and now my reflection on this is more that there could have been more elements like that. At the very end, I start to add a bit of noise to the image, and that's what you've got at the end. I hope you like it. I enjoyed making it. Thanks very much for watching. Leave a like, comment down below, subscribe to the channel, ring the notification bell, and I will see you in the next